Hello everyone, good afternoon. We from Group A will present about Augustan Ferit. Before let me introduce myself, Daniati Situmorang, my friend Nurul Aini and Yunika. The first material will be explained by my friend Yunika.
Augustan Neoclassical period 1713 until 1789. After the death of Queen Anne in 1714, the German House of Hanover took over the British throne. The monarchy was not popular, and there were two rebellions led by the Catholic son and grandson of James II in 1715 and 1745. But both were defeated. The power of Parliament and the Prime Minister continued to grow. This was the time of the Industrial Revolution and the Agricultural Revolution. Towards the end of the century, a new mood of the freedom began to stir. The American Declaration of Independence in 1776 was the first sign of this, and later the French Revolution in 1789 brought the spirit of liberty, equality, and fraternity to Europe. The rest of the novel. The rest of the novel is usually said to begin from the early 1700s, but there are many earlier examples of fictional writing. Rabbi Thomas Nazi, after the Restoration of 1660, the figure of a rabbi, novelist, dramatist, and poet, who was the first English woman known to earn her living by writing, is also important in the development of the novel. Rabbi wrote about 30 novels, including love letters between a nobleman and his sister, 1683, a novel in the form of letters, also called an epistolary novel. Mary de la Riviere Manley was a similarly second-love woman, and although her novels were hugely popular in her own lifetime, they were completely ignored by the mostly male critics who followed. Daniel and Jonathan Swift follow a little later by Samuel Richardson and Henry Fielding are the most important male themes in the story of the rest of the novel. Dove product a great many work and was a journalist for many years before publishing Robinson Crusoe in 1719. It was an immediate success and has remained one of the most famous stories in the world. Jonathan Swift is perhaps the one right who is different. His early satire, The Battle of the Books, written 1697, published 1704, is one of the best descriptions of the difference between the Agnes, the classical writer, the modern intellectual text of the Augustan period. Gulliver in Brobdingnac. The novel is in 4 parts. In the first part, Gulliver travels to Lilliput, where they meet very small inhabitants. In Book 2 on Brobdingnac, the people are almost religion of the politics, in particular are Certezes and the king of Brobdingnac. Of hearing Gulliver described in the Society of England, he says that your natives are the most pernicious race of little odious vermin the nature ever suffered to crawl upon the surface of the earth in nasty, unpleasant rubbish allowed.
The novel after 1750. After Richardson and Fielding, the novel had become a rich and varied genre. In the next 50 years, it moved in several quite different new directions. Again, there were several women writers who led the way. Charlotte Lennox, who was born in the colony of New York in America, wrote The Life of Harriet Stuart in 1750 and The Female Quixote in 1752. She concentrates on female experience from a female point of view, as her titles imply. Arabelle, the heroine of The Female Quixote, accepts all men to be her slaves, almost the opposite of the expectations of a Richardsonian heroine. The most unusual novel of the time was Tristram Shandy, 1760 to 67, by Lawrence Sterne. Augustan poetry. In Latin literature, Augustan poetry is the poetry that flourished during the reign of Caesar Augustus as Emperor of Rome, most notably including the works of Virgil, Horace, and Ovid. In English literature, Augustan poetry is a branch of Augustan literature and refers to the poetry of the 18th century, specifically the first half of the century. The term comes most originally from a term that George I had used for himself. He saw himself as an Augustus. Therefore, the British poets picked up that term as a way of referring to their endeavors, for it fit in another respect. 18th century English poetry was political, satirical, and marked by the central philosophical problem of whether the individual or society took precedence as the subject of the first. The entire Augustan Age's poetry was dominated by Alexander Pope. Since Pope began publishing when very young and continued to the end of his life, his poetry is the reference point in any discussion of the 1710s, 1720s, 1730s, or even 1740s. Furthermore, Pope's abilities were recognized early in his career, so contemporaries acknowledge his superiority for the most part. Indeed, seldom has a poet been as publicly acknowledged as a leader for as long as was Pope, and unlike the case with figures such as John Dryden or William Wordsworth, a second generation did not emerge to eclipse his position. From a technical point of view, few poets have ever approached Alexander Pope's perfection at the iambic pentameter closed couplet, heroic verse, and his lines were repeated often enough to lend quite a few cliches and proverbs to modern English usage. However, if Pope had few rivals, he had many enemies.
Journalists and criticism. With the growth of the new middle classes, there was an increasing demand of the printed word, and writing became a profession. Authors were now professional. full-time readers not only of books or plays. Many famous newspapers and magazines were started at this time, and most of the readers of the time were also journalistic. The magazines were therefore important in expressing ideas and a point of view, setting standards of taste and judgment, and influencing the values of the society. The word for and about the tone was not too inflectual or highbrow, and the term middlebrow later come to be used to describe this kind of journalism. It can be seen as comfortable and safe reading, and as a model of politeness and good taste. Uses of criticism were also becoming popular. Ryan had written several important critical pieces, and magazines often caused a lot of controversy when literary or political arguments were printed in their favor. Many writers and editors had to pay fines or were even sent to prison for expressing their opinion too strongly. All this professional reading shows a wide market for opinions and discussion of all kinds of subjects. Almost all the readers of the time could not be professional, full-time authors, and many of them worked very hard at their journalism. The work for money and journalism gave them a more or less regular income. In society where money was so important, authorship was a profession just like many others. Letters and diaries of reading which began to grow in importance in the 18th century included diaries and letters. Lady Many wanted Augustan letters in the first part of the country were famous. Later Lord Chesterfield's letter to his son published in 1774 after both of them were dead became very popular as a hope of good manner, but many people, including Dr. Johnson, did not like the kind of manners the letters described. The diaries of Samuel Pepys, describing the period between 1660 and 1669, and of Johnson Evelyn conquering the second half of the 70th century, were not published until the 19th century, but they gave details of daily life at the time of Restoration which novel and plays cannot give. Thank you.